Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Azure Cosmos DB Live TV. Episode 10. We're going to look at the new Linux emulator this week. And I'm joined on this episode by one of the newest members of the Cosmos DB team. Stephanie, want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. I'm Estefani. I'm so excited to be here. And like Mark mentioned, I'm a PM on the team, and I'm the owner of the Linux emulator.
Yeah, that's great. We bring you on the team and give you probably the coolest thing that we've worked on in the Linux emulator. Certainly one of the things that lots of folks would love us to do and create because, hey, people are building and running applications on Linux, right?
Yep,
so,
exactly.
yeah. So, well, why don't we kind of get started, I guess. So this week, you're going to kind of walk us through how to get it all set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, right before we get started, I just wanted to point out we do have a lot of interest on Linux support on the emulator. So this is actually the second most voted user item, and so I'm so excited that we're actually GAing in build.
That's going to be great. I can't wait to close that user voice item.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So to first start off, we have documentation on a secret disk that this will actually go live in build, so 525. But we have the link, Mark has it up aka.ms-linux emulator. And here we have instructions on how to run the emulator. Some things I wanted to call out. The emulator currently only supports the SQL API. And so we're looking for support once the feature actually goes into DA to include all the other APIs. Yeah, so let's dive right in, I guess.
Yeah.
So first, you have to, if you're on Mac OS, you have to first visit this link here, or you can just quickly Google search Docker. And here you need to download the Docker for Mac. So once you have that installed, you will see an icon that shows up here with Docker installed. So after that, let's go into our command line. And first, you would have to set your IP address. So this allows us to retrieve the IP address of the local machine. So once we have that, then we can pull the Docker image. So to pull the Docker image, you'd run docker pull mcr.microsoft.com/cosmos-db linux/azure-cosmos-emulator. Okay, so this command will actually pull the latest image from the Docker registry. So as you see here, we already have the latest image up and running. So once you do that, then we can run the Docker image for the Linux emulator. So this command is a really long command that has a couple of options here. I'll show it in the doc with more details, so it's a little bit easier to follow. But so we have a couple of configuration options. So we have -p, which is for all the ports we're using. So for the emulator, we currently only need 8081, 10.251, and 10.255 as emulator endpoints. We also have Cosmos emulator partition count. So this allows us to basically tell us the number of physical partitions that we need for running the emulator. So we can actually start up with as little as 3 partitions. And we also have -m, which is for memory. So the Linux emulator, we require a 3 GB or more. And then we also have -s CPUs, which is for cores. The emulator can run with as little as 0.5 cores, but it's going to not be as great in terms of performance. So we recommend to start off with 2 cores. And then lastly, we have this Cosmos emulator enable data persistence, which is a great feature we have basically allows us to persist the data. So if you have to restart the container, you will still see your data there. Currently, it's set to false, so you'll just have to set that to true. Okay.
So do we have those options in there basically just to make sure that the emulator doesn't chew up all the resources on the host?
Exactly.
Because it's gonna take as much as it can get, I guess.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for us, I have the command here with all the settings that we just mentioned. So I've set the -M to 4, CPUs to 2. And then you can name your emulator whatever you'd like. Test Linux Emulator. This is the one I'm using. And then partition, we have 3. And then I'm setting the Cosmos Emulator enable persistence variable to true. Yeah. So once we do that, we will see the so this is great. We can debug a little bit here. So I already have a container named Test Linux Emulator. So all we have to do here is go ahead and remove the emulator. So you can do docker rm test Linux emulator -f. It will remove the emulator. And now we should be able to run this. Okay, so this is going to take a little bit of time. But once it starts up, you will see all the partitions showing up here. And it will say emulator started. Meanwhile, that's running. I also wanted to call out, so this is for macOS. In the doc, we also have instructions on how to run for Linux in your Linux machine. So that's really great for you guys. But instructions are very similar to replicate.
Right.
Okay. All right, so now we have it started. So now what we have to do is if we go into our local host, you'll see this showing up. Okay, so we're going to localhost port 8081 _ explorer index HTML. So if we go here, we get this connection is not private error. So what we have to do is self-sign the emulator with our certificate. So open up a new terminal and set the iPad, so the IP address here. Once you do that, we can then curl for the emulator certificate. So once that's done, we can see if we have the certificate. So this is the contents of the certificate. Awesome. So now we can go into keychain. So keychain in Mac will allow us to import the certificates. So I have a certificate here that I'm just going to delete for now because this is when I had to do this before yesterday, testing this demo. So let's import it together. So if I go in here, I need to select File, Import Items. And you will see the emulator cert.pem here. Open it up. And I'm going to search for that really quickly. So here I have the localhost certificate. You select it, double click, and go under Trust. This is where you're going to set it to always trust. Okay. So once that's done, we should be able to go in here to our index.html, and this should populate the emulator.
Yay!
Yay! Great.
That looks right.
Yeah, this looks about right there. So we have the emulator up and running here. So if some of you have not used our Cosmos DB emulator before, we have a few of the URI, and this is the primary key and the connection string. One thing to know is I did mention that this emulator currently only works for SQL API, so this Mongo connection string actually won't work if you're trying to use it for our MongoDB API. So if we go into our Explorer, we can then create a new container, set it to manual for now, and container, I'm just going to do name for now. And you will see the container there. And then you can, insert new items, etc. One thing I did want to show is I do have a small program that inserts some data onto here. Can you see it? Yes. So in this program, I have my app config that is setting the endpoint URI to localhost 8081. And I'm using the same primary key as you saw in the emulator. So if I go ahead and, sorry, let me stop this. Yeah, so basically I'm creating a database, creating some container, and then importing some family data here. Anderson family, simple tutorial. So if I hit run this, we will see the creating the database, the container, items, and that's pretty much it of the simple demo. And then if we go back into the emulator and we do a refresh, we should see the data here, the database here.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any questions, Mark, about this before I move on?
This is really cool. I mean, it's basically our emulator, but now it's running in a Linux, in a Docker container on Linux. I mean, this is just amazing. I think customers are just, everybody, developers are just going to love that we finally have a Linux emulator for Cosmos DB. I mean, this is really exciting. I can't tell you, I've been on this team for like 3 years, and this is a really exciting time for us. So very, very cool.
Yeah, I'm also excited about this. So also, one thing I wanted to go back to the documentation. Here we have a detailed documentation on how to set it up if you're running different applications, to import the certificate if you're using a Java application. And one thing we wanted to talk about really quickly is troubleshooting. So in this section, we have some detailed issues that we might expect customers to have when using the emulator. So we have some connectivity issues that you might be having if you can't connect to the endpoint. Please make sure to go through all of these steps to ensure that you're running that the emulator is in a running state, that you're running these ports on the right ports, you imported the certificate correctly, etc. And one thing I wanted to mention is how to refresh your Linux container. So if, for example, you need to stop the container here, we can do Control-C. And this should stop the emulator. Okay, awesome. And then you have to do Docker. So if I do Docker start test -Linux -emulator, the name of the image, it will start it up again. And so while that's running up, we have instructions on how to refresh the emulator, removing the container, the images, and most importantly, if you have an issue with the emulator, we have some details as to what information you should be providing us, including description of the error, environment, what environment you're running, computer and processor type. So this is important because the emulator actually only works on Intel-based processor chips. So if you have a Mac with the M1 chip, it's not going to actually work. So one caveat there.
Yeah, you should. Is that documented somewhere?
Yes, yes, it's in the document here.
Okay.
Earlier. Yeah.
It might trip up some folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So make sure to note that that's one of the issues, or something that we're working on. And whatever you're using to start up the emulator, the description of the workload, sample database, and then you can send all of this to this email here, and we'll be able to help out with that.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Really excited. What's our next plan for what API would be next? I guess would it be the Mongo API that we work on next?
Yes, the Mongo API, and we're also working on just basically adding compute to the emulator. So once we have Mongo API, we can then also support all the other APIs as well.
Ah, okay. Okay, great. Very exciting. So if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask questions in the chat here. And then I'll put up the URL so that all the download instructions and configuration, everything that Estefani is showing there is all there at that AKA MS link that she's got up. And then, so you said we're gonna GA this thing at build, you said?
It's going into public preview, so we're waiting for GA once we have support for all of the other APIs, and then we'll be able to GA the feature. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. You got to have the other APIs before you go GA, right?
Exactly.
Great. All right. Well, is that it? Anything else to show?
That's pretty much how you get started on this. And one last thing on the emulator, if this is your first time using Cosmos DB, we also provide really good startup sample with some data that you can just click. It will populate your container there, and you'll be able to see some sample data, so you can get started a lot faster.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, love it. All right. Well, short episode this week, but definitely a exciting one, impactful. This is fantastic stuff. So excited, and thanks for coming on and showing us the new Linux emulator for Cosmos DB.
Yes, definitely feel free to reach out to that email if you have any questions, if you have any features you'd like us to support, and we'll reach out back to you.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it for us this week, everyone. Join us next week. We're going to have Thomas Weiss back on, and he's going to talk about using Cosmos DB with service endpoints and private endpoints so that you can run your database in a secure fashion inside a subnet, because who wants to run their database out on the public internet? Not the best thing you could do, I don't think. Exposing your endpoints out there for anybody to beat away at them, put them in a subnet, and then just access them via private IP. So anyway, Tom's going to show us all that next week on Azure Cosmos DB. So Estefani, want to thank you so much again for coming on, and looking forward to seeing more of this at Build. In fact, we'll see you next time on the Build Roundup show that we're doing. That's in 2 weeks. On the 27th. So we'll see you back then. You can just say how relieved you are that we're finally in public preview.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.